Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform where alumni can network and connect with their fellow members, whether it be college alumni, fraternities, sororities, business alumni association, or athletes. We give them a place to go. And this show has been created to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. We talk to former athletes and hear their story and their successful transition. And we're really excited today to have Stephen Clarke with us. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, buddy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Stephen is a former professional hockey player. After that, he transitioned to a very successful advertising career, owning a large advertising agency. And now he's doing something special. His company is called RTG Group USA. And I'm going to look again because I want to make sure I say it right because he said it great. It's social impact and making the world a better place to go. So anyway, I got it. It was tough, but so one of the questions I always ask in the beginning is talk a little bit about playing sports growing up and how that kind of shaped you up into your early years, like going into like high school, ultimately leading to your professional level.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I mean, I grew up, on the poor side, but for whatever reason, a gifted athlete. So that was always great because I was always one of the best athletes, if not in the school, as I was growing up. So I was always invited to different places, and I got to really learn a lot about the other aspect of life. And so I was just, as I said, we were always playing. Of course, when I grew up, we weren't on the internet. We weren't doing all that crazy stuff. We were out playing stuff. We were constantly playing. I mean, we created games sometimes. I remember Burby. I don't know if anybody out there recalls Burby, but it was a game that was with a rubber ball, a bat, and it was only three players. One was in the field, one was pitching, and we played it up against the wall.
We did a box. In the US we call that either a stickball or there was another name for it as well, but we had a game called automatic. So
okay. So this was up against the wall. So we draw a box and we threw it in there, and then there was just one fielder, and we would play that game for hours. And then of course the ball hockey, it was just constant sports. And again, so for whatever reason, I was just kind of, gifted. I had a great eye hand coordination. I was fast as a runner. And so I got into all the sports, and it was just part of my life. And my parents both worked, my mom 2 jobs. And so I was able to do kind of whatever I wanted to do, which was, fortunately for me, was sports. Yeah. So that's how I kind of grew up.
Okay, that's great. And did you dream of being a professional athlete? And before you answer that, because it'll be interesting since you did play hockey, but did you want to be a professional athlete in a different sport, or do you always look at hockey?
Yeah, I didn't, I never really, to be honest, it wasn't like a typical Canadian kid growing up and I want to get to the NHL. Never really thought too much about that. I was just, really focused on just kind of being me and finding my way and I knew early on that I wanted to be successful financially because, of course, I was growing up without those things. If I wanted a bike, for example, when I wanted a bike, everywhere else getting a bike, I went to the scrapyard. I got a bunch of parts and everything like that. And I put the ugliest bike together that you could ever see. I mean, it was like ugly. I didn't care because first of all, I was a tough kid. And secondly, I was like one of the best athletes in the school. So what ended up happening was that bike was so ugly. I mean, it was terrible. I spray painted it. I mean, it was just disgusting. But within like 2 days, I had orders for to build 9 bikes. Because everybody wanted a bike like mine, right? Because I was this kid. So I started building. So that was kind of probably my first business. And so it was, so I never really said until I maybe got into high school, I never really thought about professional. And that's actually when my kind of teachers and my coaches and everything on the different sports sat me down and said, listen, you're gifted enough to play professional sports. You could play in a couple of different sports, but if you really want to do that, then you should really focus on one. Because quite frankly, if you could do that, you'll make it. You'll make it to the show, and you might be like really good. So that's kind of when I knew, because I was playing tennis and football and like everything. And so then I started to kind of focus on hockey because that was my love. I mean, I loved hockey. Started playing when I was like 3. And so, it was, that's when I really started to say, okay, you know what, I can do this. I'm better than most of the guys around me. and I knew some of the guys from my school, high school, that were playing in the show. So, they would come out and scrimmage with us and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, they're better than me, but in a few years I could be just as good, if not better than them. So that's kind of where it ended up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talk a lot about is kind of the education of, I guess, ultimately the transition out of sports, whether it's college or transition out of professional
Right.
sports. And you were fortunate to pretty much go into professional sports and didn't necessarily have all those years in college. But what are you seeing out there? Maybe back then and probably more now. Are you seeing efforts for people to make educating like, hey, when it's over, which for less than a tenth of a percent make it to professional level, when it's over, you really need to be doing other things. Do you see that out there with
Yeah, I see that. I mean, back in the day, that wasn't the case. Back in the day, we seemed to have the mentality that we were going to play forever. And so when all of a sudden, in my case, for example, after 5 years, I blew up my knee, had a bunch of surgeries, and basically they came back and said, "You're not playing again." I mean, there's no way. And so that was really difficult. That was a really difficult time because hadn't really prepared for that, and there was no help really around. Today, I'm so pleased to say that, first of all, athletes are making, a gazillion dollars. So, when they transition out, they've got, all these other things. In fact, as you know, we're doing a franchise model right now with athletes, and these guys can transition just into stuff like that, and they're set. But there's more preparation now. They're understanding that this is all these are games where you could be, it could be at the end tomorrow. I mean, there's
yeah,
not going to be too many Brady's around ever again, playing to your 45 or something. So these guys know that now they go into it, which is really, really good. I really like the idea that when they go into these, they sign these contracts. Right away, they've got agents and managers and everything telling them, "Hey, this isn't forever.
right,
This is like one chapter, and this is going to end sometime. It could be, it could be next year, it could be in 10 years, but it's going to end. So let's plan for that now." And we never got any of that. We never, nobody ever was ever talking about that. So I'm glad to see where things are now. And I think the transition from athletes are going to be a lot better
right,
because they're no longer simply defined as we were by being an athlete. Like one day you're a professional athlete, and the next day you're kind of like nothing.
right,
And it's like, whoa, theyese guys know they're prepared for that. They've got all these other things set up. And so while they might be, they might be referred to as ex-professional athletes or whatever, guys go on with careers now and they've got, do all these other things. I mean, people talk about Shaq today, they don't necessarily refer to the fact that he was an ex-NBA guy. I mean, he's a
right.
franchise guy, he's a business guy, he does all these great things, and
Yeah,
they refer to that stuff now.
yeah,
That kind of what defines Shaq now is what he's doing today,
yeah,
not what he did. Yes, they'll say, well, he was one of the greatest for
sure.
sure, but yeah, that's not. So there's a lot of good stuff happening in the sports world today.
And that's great. I mean, I think it, obviously, I guess it depends on where it's at. I mean, you hear some of the schools they try to make efforts. It was interesting. I was talking to another guy earlier, and we're saying that, and you'll probably attest this as well as an athlete. A lot of the athletes aren't really thinking about that anyway. So like he said, you could have gone back when he was in college, and you could have said, hey, you should be looking at plan A, B, C, D, or you should be looking at, here's financial literacy, things like that. And as an athlete, not really having it because your sole focus is on that. So
Yeah.
tell me, how do you think people can kind of break into that mentality for a positive and try to get some of these athletes to understand, again, yes, you're not going to be doing this for life, and here's some other avenues. Do you see some ways that can be done?
Yeah, I do. I think that, in fact, I talk to athletes right now, and it's amazing when you start saying to them, you start asking those types of questions. Athletes are, for the most part, pretty smart guys. I mean,
Sure.
or women as well. And so when you start asking them these questions, that you'd like say, okay, when do you think, like, how long do you think you've got, and what's your plan for when you're not playing anymore? Start asking these hard questions. They'll answer them, or they'll start thinking about them anyway.
Right.
And I think that you have to be. Everyone's kind of, up until now, I think it's starting to change, obviously, but they're kind of pussyfooting around it because they don't want to, you get the guy thinking that they're getting the guy thinking of when he's going to start. Well, that's what they need to be thinking about. I mean, it's not
Right.
like they're going to be thinking about it anyway. Athletes, when we're in practice or games or whatever, that's all we focus on.
Right.
But when we're not,
Yeah.
like we're regular human beings, right? So
Sure.
you've got to start talking. I wish people had have said that to me. I was just fortunate. I got lucky because I was introduced to advertising when I got hurt. And, I was really lucky. I know guys in similar situations who, some of them ended up living on the street. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's not good. So I think today it's a lot better. And I think if you're looking into breaking into that field, you got to ask the hard questions. You got to say, listen, I'm just here to help you do this because one day, I mean, if you go to an athlete today and say, hey, listen, one day you're not going to be able to play. You agree with that? What's he going to say? No. He's going to say, well, of course. You
Yeah.
say, well, I'm just here to help you prepare for that. Whenever that comes, hopefully it doesn't come for. Maybe you're in Tom Brady and you're playing until you're 45 or 46, but maybe not. Maybe it's only 5 years, and we've got to prepare for that just in case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's I definitely see that. And what about obviously like with Alumni Direct, where it's about we're trying to, like I said, networking and connecting. As an athlete, let's kind of take twofold. I mean, because obviously talking to you now, I mean, experienced business guy, networking, connecting, fantastic at it. But when you were playing in your younger days, is that something that you did or you saw other athletes doing, networking, connecting while they were still playing?
Not really. I mean, we were kind of in our own little bubble, and we kind of stayed there. Maybe afterwards, there were some players like me who just, because of this my situation, I mean, I just got away from hockey like completely. I didn't, hang out or reach out to any of my buddies or had a whole bunch of people, obviously in Sweden that I was connected to and knew, and I just kept, it was just, I wanted to, when I finally realized it took me about 3 months, by the way, to come to the realization that it was over. I was no longer a hockey player. I knew that there was time to start a new chapter, and that didn't involve hockey. I didn't want to be a coach or anything like that. I wanted to do something new. I was introduced to advertising. I found out that was going to be my new chapter. So forget the next chapter. It's like a book, right? I'm not
Yeah.
going back and reading that chapter all the time.
Right.
I'm writing a new one, right?
Yeah.
So this is going to be my new one, and so I don't have time for that other one. And so I'm sorry that I did that, but that's the way I handled it. I think today it's a lot different,
Right.
and I think athletes are reaching out, and I talk to a lot of them, on a weekly basis, and they all have kind of that network of guys, whether it's a big one or a small one, but they all have that network they can reach out to. I was just talking to George Jones not that long ago, and he's got, he's telling me that he was talking to Manning, to Archie Manning actually, which was really cool. And so he's got that thing. You reach out to people and get advice from and things like that.
And that's great. I mean, even like the mentoring, like I know we talk about, a lot of times I'll ask guys, former college players, and I'll say, either when they were there or now, is there an effort from the schools to reach out to these alumni athletes, not just to come back and talk about like, hey, do this play or that play, but more to take that holistic approach and look at, again, the financial literacy or the mental health challenge and things like that. So, are you, in these other athletes you talked to too, do they talk about that at all as far as going back to their schools and,
Yeah, I think a lot of them, a lot of the alumni, school alumni who played in college and universities. I mean, they keep in touch with a lot of those guys, and they get together regularly. I was invited twice last year, I think, to kind of alumni golf weekends and stuff like that. I didn't have time to go, but I mean, so yeah, I think that that's kind of a cool thing. That's one of the things I think that I kind of miss out on when they talk about that, and I'm like, yeah, I
right.
kind of missed that. But I had my own alumni, which was professional athletes, but yeah, I think the universities is just a great way to build up lifetime relationships,
Yeah.
and I think there's more now than there ever was, maybe, of the understanding of how important that is. We talk about things now that your net worth is your network.
Yeah.
We never talked about stuff like that before. I mean, what are you talking about? We wouldn't even know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
But now people realize that it's so important, and we got the internet now, and you're building up all these different connections. I mean, that's how you and I met, and
Yeah.
so you build up these networks, and you work on them, and you do different things together. So I think the alumni is getting stronger and stronger. I think what you're doing is really, really good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean that's we want to we want to kind of have that place to bring them together, and
Yeah.
even along the way, like we talked about college, but talking about like professional sports, the different whether it's the NHL or the NBA, Major League Baseball, it's some of the different folks I've talked to. Um, Not that they're saying bad things, but basically that whether it's a bandwidth issue or whatever, that there's not as much. They'd like to see more help from those professional alumni associations. Like, I guess what's your experience from um, maybe like hockey in particular, but then your experience with others that have played other sports and how they talk about their alumni groups and maybe some things that can be done to help them.
Yeah, I think the alumni groups will over time get stronger. I think for the most part, when I played and hockey, alumni is was never really that strong. Everybody lost touch, and it was just kind of something that you did. I know for a fact that the NFL alumni is much stronger.
Yeah.
They have chapters in every city. But it's, 32. Actually, they have. No, they have 34 because there's two cities that they have alumni chapters in that no longer have teams, but they still have the alumni chapters there. And they have the national one, and then they have each city, and there's presidents, and they do regular meetings. I was supposed to be at one in Houston in November that I couldn't make, but so they get together and they basically they talk a few things that they want to discuss and everything, and that's just really big networking. Hey, what are you doing? Catching up, having fun, going out for drinks, doing all that kind of stuff. So it's a true networking, and I think that they do a good job. And I've never been to one of the NBA ones, but I do know firsthand the NFL does a really good job with that.
Well, that's great. And I mean, it's sometimes you hear it, a lot of it's about the star players, but I think there's more and more recognition, especially now, just with the rough transition out of sports that there's helped me. I don't know if you saw, like somebody told me to watch the Weight of Gold. Have you seen that? And
Yeah.
it's disheartening, and for those out there who haven't seen it, it's about Olympic athletes, and just
Yes.
it's so sad to see. You could train your whole life, and not to look at other sports because you train your whole life too, but to be able to have every 4 years and maybe only one time in like a 60-second event or a 5-minute event or whatever it might be, and just a lot of the
Exactly.
challenges, mental health challenges.
Yeah, I've got friends, for example, that they're still in my circle, and we get together often, and we'll go out, and I'll introduce them, and people say, "Oh yeah, what do you do?" and everything like that. Meanwhile, the guy's a gold medal Olympic winner,
Yeah.
and it's like, and then finally I just wait because I want to find out if they know who he is. Yeah, this
Right.
is here, and then finally I'll say, "Hey, you realize that? What are you, Canadian, or like where are you from? Where do you live? Right? What are you talking about? I'm Canadian." I'm like, "Yeah, well, this guy was a gold medal
Wow.
Olympic in the hurdles. I mean, what are you talking? You don't know who the hell he is? No, they get forgotten just like that.
Yeah.
And so we actually have a program in LA that we're looking to get together with the Olympics on. We've talked to them already. That's called PASA, and that's professional athletes supporting amateur athletes.
That's
And it's all
great.
done through feeding kids and everything like that. It's a really cool model. And so yeah, because we just think that they need more these amateur athletes. And you know what? Here's the thing that they don't realize, and a lot of people don't realize, is that professional athletes have so much respect for amateur athletes. It's like, look at these guys. They first of all, they train so hard, and they're competing against. We don't compete against everybody in the world.
Right.
I mean, yeah, we're the best. Well, no, we don't compete against everybody in the world. Maybe hockey now, it's more so than anybody because we got all these other countries. But these guys go up against all of them. They train for so long, and then as you just mentioned, they do their event, they win their gold medal, and then it's over.
Yeah.
And maybe a few of them, as you've got some in the States, the swimmers, and Mark Spitz we were talking to the other day. I mean, people still remember that name, but I mean,
Yeah.
what's he doing? I mean, who knows? I mean, I do
Yeah.
now because I talked to him, but
Exactly.
it's like whoa. I mean, so this is so interesting. I really have a great deal of respect for Olympic athletes who got to the pinnacle, did their thing, won,
Right.
and then they kind of get forgotten like really quickly. So yeah. Yeah, I think we can do more for that as well.
Yeah. So let's say that, I want to address just your transition out of talk a little about your transition out of sports into the real world. So to speak, not the real world. I mean, it's not the right way to say
Yeah,
it, but you know what I
yeah.
mean. But like talk about that. Tell us your journey there.
Yeah, that's comprised of I kid with people, kind of, not really, but it was a lot of drugs and booze and women for about 90 days because I mean it was like it was like over, just like boom, like that.
Yeah,
And that's tough. That's really, really tough. That's mentally just it's you're just so confused. And again, not a lot of help back in the day for
right.
that. And so I had to overcome that myself. And it was just like kind of one day I woke up and it was like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
what are you doing? Like, I mean, that's kind of over. You got to do something else. And as fate would have it, as I said, got a call from a hockey player introducing me to a president of an advertising company. And before I knew it, I was in the advertising world working for a company and loving it. And so it enabled me. So I got help indirectly, but yeah, it's tough. It's really, really tough because again, you define yourself and you're surrounded with people who tell you how good you are every single day. And you need that, by the way. People say, well, you got to have it because you're competing against not just the other people, you're competing against all the guys in your own organization and the miners who want your job and everything else. And so it's a constant struggle, and you have to buy into that. You have to believe that you're as good as they're telling you, if not better, and you do. And then imagine that. So imagine the ego that a professional athlete must develop, and then all of a sudden they're no longer playing. Now what happens? What do they just say? Oh, I'm no good anymore? Of course not. They still walk around thinking, for the most part, that they're something special,
right.
and they quickly realize that they're not. They're not anymore. They were defined by that. It's like a CEO of a company who gets let go and he can't get another job. And it's very depressing for them because I
Yeah,
was this big shot. I was, well, I'm the CEO of whatever. Now, well, where do you work now? Well, yeah, I don't have a job. I'm still looking for one, a year later. So it's tough. It's really tough on athletes because they get, bombarded. And then I don't want to say they're discarded, but
right.
kind of they are, right?
Yeah,
Because they're of no more use to the organization or to the sport or whatever. And so they're it's kind of like, yeah, okay. So that, yeah, you were great and whatever. But now we're moving on to the next one, right?
yeah,
So it's like, okay, cool. So it's certainly tough. Transitions can be very, very difficult. Some guys I happen to know and know very well didn't make it.
yeah.
They didn't make the transition. They're no longer with us. And
That's sad, and
yeah,
that's where we really want to help make an impact and bringing the resources and kind of being that platform, the
absolutely.
conduit to to have these athletes have some place to go so that it doesn't get to that point.
We need to get them the help for sure. And we're working, one of our program is partnering up with mental health. And yeah, we need to, we definitely need that because mental health right now, funny enough, I don't know if your listeners know this, but there's about 50 million people, that suffer from food insecurities. That's the same amount that suffer from mental illness.
Wow,
So we
that's
talk about, oh, the food, we got to do this and everything like that. That's the same percentage,
yeah.
same amount.
Wow.
So a lot of people suffering. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So again, through our program, as you know, with collaboration, we're able to give money back to that, and so we're looking at doing some things that will really really help them with that.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, kind of last question
Yeah,
regarding like give some advice and a few words or whatever to athletes that are transitioning out of sports.
yeah. I think again, not a lot of advice I can give guys today because they've got because as I say, a ton of money. I mean, financially, the biggest issue we had is finances. We were leaving. We were making, nowhere near what they're making now. I don't even want to tell people what we're making, but that now. What do we do next? Because we spent most of that
Right.
because that's just the life we lived, right? And so these guys have got agents and everything like that. So they're well, a lot of these guys now, which I'm really again happy to see and happy to hear when I hear well, and I talk. In fact, next week I've got I'm talking to representatives of two of the Toronto Maple Leafs, big guys in the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I'm talking to their people about basically getting involved in our franchise. And these people only look to people that can help them and set everything up after they're finished. Like it's really great that this will help them with their brand in the city because in Toronto and they're going to be feeding kids. That's really nice and everything. But more importantly, when they finish, this thing is going to be there. It's going to still keep their brand relevant, number one. And number two, it's a great cash opportunity for them that if they need it, it's there. If not, they'll put it back into, other causes. So I'm really, really happy to see that. So I don't think I could give athletes today too much advice, except they could give me a call and get a franchise in their city of choice. So that would be one advice.
Well, that was a great segue.
Yeah, exactly.
So talk about what you're doing today with RTG Group, and we've talked a little bit about it. Share with our listeners, what you're doing, all across the board with the different organization.
Yeah, I think that what I did is the next chapter of my life after I sold. It was about doing good. Social impact really important, but leaving a legacy. I think everybody wants to do that, and for me, and all my mentors I had, and I had some of the greatest mentors in the world. They'd always say to me, what do you want on your tombstone? Who wants to think about that? But I always say instinctively that he made a difference in the world. Of course, they'd always shoot back, "Have you?" And I'd say, "Well, yeah, I've given to charities and everything like that, but." I knew I could do more. And so this is a chance. I built a new model, a new way of giving. Quite frankly, I think it's the future of giving. I think that right now with the models we have, the charity models, which great intentions and everything like that, but we're not getting it done. We're giving them enough money to get it done, but the model might not be the best way for today, today's world. So I built a new model, and what we're doing is we're the first social impact franchise in the world called Purpose Driven Travel. And we're going into each city, and each city will have one franchise. And this is really unique because people say that could never work. In fact, every CEO of every charity says that won't work until I finish explaining it to them. They're like, "Wow, how do we say no?" So we go into each city, one franchise in Houston, one in Dallas, one in Miami, one in Atlanta, and we bring the entire community together, every cause, and we say to them, well, "You're going to give us your volunteers. And together with your volunteers and in our model, we're going to end hunger in this city, starting with children." And of course, all these charities say, "Well, that's great, good for you, but we're with diabetes, or we're with cancer, and we're the thing." Say, "Yeah, I know you are." And what we're going to do is we're going to show you that through our model, you can actually make more money, but we'll also incentivize your volunteers with free travel. Now think about that, because there's 80 million volunteers in the United States, and they get nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, why shouldn't they win as well? Yeah. Aren't they the lifeblood of what's this rule? You can't give them money or whatever. No. So we're going to make sure they get travel. So, a person goes in, we just did this deal in Houston where, this charity's got 100 of their top volunteers who now don't get compensated, but raise about, $12,000 a year for this charity. Well, now they're going to go out and feed 500 kids. And not only is the charity going to get their 12,000, if not more, for a longer period of time through our model, but now the volunteers are all going to get $3,000 a year in travel. So really becomes a win-win-win. So we found a way that we could tap in, offer transparency, sustainability, and collaboration. And I believe that the real solution to all the problems we're facing today, whether it's hunger, homelessness, climate, is by bringing purpose and profit together and working together. And so that's what our models are. All the companies we have, that's the one. Purpose-driven travel is going to be our flagship. And we hope that we'll have, between Canada and the United States this year, we'll probably have about 60 to 70 franchises. Average franchise will probably feed about 100,000 kids. So that means, by the middle of next year, we're feeding between 5 and 7 million kids a month.
Wow, that's fantastic.
A meal every day, by the way, non-GMO organic food.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about that because we talk.
Yeah, that one for me is really important because sometimes the kids don't really get the food that they need. So we formulated this food ourselves. We made sure it was good, healthy food, and that's what it is. So we manufacture the food, we ship it to the city. That the volunteers got the subscribers to pay, and it gets distributed, of course, by nonprofits and charities in that city. And of course, we have this discount mobile app. that's got all the vendors and all the retailers in that city that are going to give them a minimum of 15% off every time they use it. Not to mention all the free gifts and everything that we're doing, draws and everything every week. So it really becomes a win-win-win. Everybody wins, and that's going to be the only way that we're going to be able to solve the real problems that we have, because we can't keep doing it the way we're doing right now.
Yeah, that's great. So how do people find you?
So they can reach out to me. Obviously my LinkedIn is that's where you and I met, and very active on LinkedIn. But S Clarke at rtggroupinc.com is my email. Best way to get a hold of me is there, or as I say on LinkedIn, I'm on there every day. That's kind of our platform. So those are the ones to get a hold of me in the not too distant future. Purpose Driven Travel will be head office in West Palm Beach, Florida. Yeah, we got some really, really exciting things. You'll hear more about them. Regardless of what city you're in, you're going to hear about it, because mayors are buying into it. They love the idea. And now CEOs of other charities are actually saying to us, we have no choice. I mean, this is a win-win. We're going to make more money, and you're going to incentivize our volunteers. How could we say no?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the deal there.
That's great. So, and we'll put that in the show notes, and
Yeah.
you can find Alumni Direct on alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and then also just follow the show, Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. We're on YouTube. We're on all the podcasts, and it was really great talking to you, and really appreciate all the good stuff that you're doing. And I think together a lot of us can really make an impact in this athlete transition and making it a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.